Story 1. The Daycare. I once worked at a daycare that was in a very old mansion, and I experienced some pretty incredible events that I will never forget. Once when I was locking up for the whole place, on a dark autumn night, I was taking the garbage bin out, and I glanced up at the attic window. To my horror, there were flames licking the window, and the whole attic was glowing bright orange. My first instinct was to call 911, but I had a feeling that I should investigate further. I ventured back into the building. I ran up the long carved wood staircase to the top floor, and as I opened the door to the attic, I suddenly felt very afraid and unsure of my choice to enter the house alone. Nancy Drew, I was not. What was I doing? When I found the attic dark and empty, I was a little relieved, but somewhat unnerved, that what I had seen was not from this plane of existence. To prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind, I went home to get my dad and my boyfriend. As skeptical as they were, they both saw the flames. My dad drove around the house to see if it was light reflecting off of something else. There wasn't any lights to be seen. My dad informed me that about 10 years ago, there had been a fire in the attic. Only the attic was damaged. A friend of mine who worked downstairs was opening up one day, when as soon as she stepped in the door, all 3 taps in the children's room bathroom turned on full blast. A leaking tap is explainable, but all 3 at once, just as my friend walked in the door, was very frightening. After that, my friend seemed to be the target of many spiritual, paranormal encounters. I believe that some people are just more open to this type of thing, and therefore act as a doorway for communication. All the daycare staff has had their name called out by an unseen presence, but the most spine-chilling experience was when the lady of the house finally showed herself. Once again, my friend was the person of choice. She was in the upstairs bathroom, which is rather foreboding at the best of times, washing her hands. As she was washing, she had that chilling feeling that she was no longer alone. She shut off the tap and looked up into the mirror above the sink. She not only saw her own reflection, but a distorted one of what appeared to be an old woman standing right behind her. The woman's features were unclear, but her size and presence were unmistakable. A few other experiences involved objects flying down a hallway, a missing knife that turned up on the door frame 10 foot off the ground, and once a child was playing outside, suddenly pointed upstairs to a window and said, "Why is that old lady looking at me?" Often people have asked us how we stood to work there, but we never really felt threatened, and the lady of the house seemed to really care about the children. Story 2. Bad Ghost. I was about to fall asleep when somebody woke me up. I was really tired and thought that maybe I was just seeing things, but what I saw was really strange, and I don't know why I would just think something like that up. It was a person, but I couldn't see it like I could see a living person. It was more like a mist, a tall mist. I knew it was staring at me. I couldn't tell if it was male or female, and at that moment, when I first saw it, I didn't know if it was bad or good. And then it appeared over me, hovering over me, looking down on my face, and I could tell that it wanted something from me. And then I realized that I couldn't move or breathe, and I started to panic. I got really scared. What happened next was really just too much. It was like whatever this was sucking the air out of me. I could actually feel my breath being taken away. I thought I was going to die. And then it just disappeared. I jumped from my bed and ran to my door. I ran to my brother's room to make sure he was okay, and everything was fine. I literally just sat in the bathroom floor for an hour or so, and then I was finally too tired to stay awake. I decided that whatever it was probably gone by now. So I ventured back into my bedroom. I turned on the light and said out loud that whatever did that was not okay and it needed to leave. And I went back to sleep. And it came right back. This time it was standing at the foot of my bed. And then it appeared next to my bed, leaning over me. And again, I couldn't breathe or talk or move. I started repeating over and over in my mind, "Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God." I was panicking, my mind racing. And then it disappeared again. Once again, I ran out of my room and checked on my brother. And I stayed in the bathroom for another hour before I ventured back into my room and tried to go back asleep. This time, nothing happened. It never came back. And I'm so glad I've never had another experience like that. Story 3. Family Tree. This is a strange tale to tell. It is completely from the memory of my mother, though it happened to me. First, some background. The house my parents lived in, and still live in today, is over 100 years old. It was originally a bungalow, not far from the beach. Once the area was a tourist attraction, and a vacation hotspot. My father's great-grandfather built this bungalow and lived there with his wife until they died. The house got passed on to my father's grandfather, who lived there with his wife for a long time. My father's father moved out when he got married and lived about 100 yards away in his own house. My grandfather had a gambling problem, and when his father and mother passed away, their children sold the house for money. They needed to pay off debts. The people across the street bought the house. The lower level of the house was turned into a store, and they kept up the store while living across the street and raising their own children there. The upper portion of the house was converted into a pool hall and kind of a clubhouse for neighborhood kids. My father used to play pool there with his friends. When they were about 15 or so, he ended up marrying the daughter of the new owners, and as a wedding gift, they gave the house to my parents. The house was fixed up by their friends while my father was in Vietnam, and my parents moved in once he was out of the army. Things were quiet in the house until my sister and I were born. Then all of a sudden, things started happening. Things would disappear and then reappear sometimes later. The sound of what my parents referred to as my sister and I walking in our pajama-clad feet could be heard all over the house. They would hear this shuffling sound, open the door from the living room into the kitchen, and expect to see us sneaking around while we should have been asleep. They would always find nothing, and the noise would stop. This was about the extent of the sightings until I was about 2 years old. My mother was sick with the flu. My father was at work. My sister was watching TV in the living room with my mother, and I snuck off to my room. The living room opens into the kitchen, which opens into me and my sister's bedroom. So it's 3 rooms in a row. The windows were an old style. They were really big enough to be a door in weight. There was one in my room that had been opened to let the fresh air in. Next to this window was a child-sized table and chair that, from my mom's recalling of the story, I must have climbed on. I must have wanted to see out the window, so I crawled over to look out. From what my mother determined from the babbling of a hysterical 2-year-old, I fell out the window, or almost, and was picked up out of the air and set back on the floor by nothing visible. When my mother found me, I was standing next to the table and chair, screaming, crying so hysterically that I just couldn't move. The only words my mother could get out from me was this long, "do this," and grabbing my arms. After hours of trying to calm me down, I managed to get the story out, as best as a 2-year-old could. I was out the window, and someone grabbed my arm and put me back on the floor. There was proof, however. I had 3 marks on my arms, the size of finger points, and a thumb. I was afraid to go in my room for days, and would sleep only with my parents in the room with me. I was not really the type of child for fanciful storytelling, and I didn't scare easy. I remember other things happening in this house, but nothing that big. My sister and I had bunk beds, and I was on top bunk. Several nights my parents would come in to find me on the floor crying, having fell out of the bed, always asleep, never hurt. I started to feel that whatever was in the house was protecting me, for whatever reason. My room became my place of comfort. I learned when I was 10 that my great-great-grandparents' bedroom was my room. The house originally only had 3 rooms. I slept in the room my great-great-grandmother took her last breath in. I believe that she loved me so much that she came back to protect us. All the paranormal activity stopped when I turned about 14. My parents renovated the house and expanded upwards, removing most of the old attic. The day my dad sealed up the remainder of the old attic, the blinds in the house fell in 5 rooms. That's a weird coincidence. Things have been quiet. My sister has since moved out and has 2 children of her own. One has started seeing things. I'm an adult now and recently moved out and became engaged. My mother says that now that her and Dad are alone in the house, they hear footsteps in the old living room and my old bedroom. They know that no one's in the house with them. I think that maybe my great-great-grandmother is coming back to check on them. Story 4. The Ghost Bride. When I was little, we stayed at this big, high-ceilinged house in Jakarta. Since it was so big, we used to rent rooms to people. We never really knew about the place being haunted, although I felt strangely scared sometimes, until some people rented rooms from us told us that the house was haunted. Some said that a giant man shook his bed at night and asked who his queen was. It disappeared when he said a prayer. The maid said that on occasion she'd see a woman on the stairs that would disappear. One renter said that he woke up to find someone playing the guitar in his room, and that when he came fully awake, the person just disappeared. I get scared when I pass the kitchen area, where the stairs for the empty small room was. I can't explain why I get scared. One time, I had to get something from that room. My sister did not want to go with me. I really didn't want to go by myself, but I did. It was a bright, sunny day, but I was just scared. I couldn't breathe. Nothing happened, but I couldn't shake that feeling. One night my sister was spending the night at a friend's house, so I'd have to sleep by myself. I turned some music on, I left a light on, and at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, someone from the house bust open in my door, pale like they had seen a ghost. They could barely speak. Well, because they did see a ghost. She said that there was a ghost in my sister's room, wearing my sister's wedding gown. She said the gown was so big and full with this ghost in it, and the ghost had long black hair. I went back to sleep and woke up sometime later with a shadow moving under the door and the sound of someone scratching at the door with long nails. It sounded like the ghost was waiting for me to come out. I was really scared at this point. The next morning, I told my sisters about the story, and apparently our mother had experienced the same thing that night. Not long after that, we made the decision to move out. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Bye.